Warriors and Valkyries, welcome to our Hall of Norse Tales. Before we embark on our journey through the fjords of imagination, don't forget to join our tribe. Ring the notification bell, raise your axes by giving a like, and leave in the comments which realm you're watching from. Now, settle close to the hearth, for our saga is about to begin. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of lavender and gold, the peaceful realm of Midgard settled into its nightly slumber. In the quaint village of Bjornholm, nestled between rolling hills and ancient forests, the inhabitants prepared for another tranquil evening. Elsa, a kindly grandmother, tucked her grandchildren into bed, her voice soft as she whispered, "Sleep well, little ones. May Freya bless your dreams." The children yawned, their eyes heavy with sleep. "Tell us a story, Farmore," pleaded little Eric, his blonde curls peeking out from beneath the fur blanket. Elsa smiled warmly, settling into her rocking chair. "Very well, but just a short one. Once upon a time, in a land not so different from ours." But as Elsa's soothing voice filled the cozy cabin, far above in the realm of Asgard, a very different scene was unfolding. Loki, the god of mischief, paced restlessly in his chambers, his emerald eyes glinting with barely contained excitement. "Oh, what fun we shall have tonight," he murmured to himself, long fingers tracing the outline of an ancient artifact he had borrowed from Odin's vault. The artifact, a small obsidian orb, no larger than an apple, pulsed with an ominous red glow. Loki chuckled, his silver tongue dancing with delight as he spoke to the orb. "My little fire bearers, how long you've been trapped? Wouldn't you like to stretch your legs? Or perhaps your flames?" With a flick of his wrist, Loki tossed the orb into the air. It hung suspended for a moment before shattering in a burst of crimson light. The god's laughter echoed through the halls of Asgard as tiny embers began to rain down upon the unsuspecting realm of Midgard. Back in Bjornholm, Elsa paused in her storytelling, a frown creasing her weathered brow. "That's strange," she muttered, peering out the window at the night sky. "What is it, Farmore?" asked little Astrid, Elsa's youngest grandchild. "I thought I saw... No, it couldn't be. Red snow in summer?" Elsa shook her head, turning back to the children with a reassuring smile. "It must be these old eyes playing tricks on me." But as the night wore on, the red snow began to take form. Tiny sparks drifted down from the heavens, each one growing and shifting until they touched the ground. Where they landed, small flames erupted, quickly growing into humanoid shapes of living fire. The first scream pierced the night air, startling Elsa and the children from their sleep. They rushed to the window, eyes widening in horror at the sight before them. Fire demons, their bodies flickering with malevolent flames, stalked through the village streets, setting everything they touched ablaze. "By the gods!" Elsa gasped, clutching the children close. "What evil is this?" Outside, chaos reigned. Villagers stumbled from their homes, disoriented and terrified. The village elder, Bjorn, raised his voice above the growing pandemonium. "To the great hall! Quickly now, bring water and blankets!" As families rushed to follow Bjorn's instructions, the fire demons continued their relentless advance. Trees that had stood for centuries became torches, their ancient branches crackling and groaning as they succumbed to the inferno. In the midst of the mayhem, a young warrior named Leif tried to rally his fellow villagers. "Stand and fight!" he cried, brandishing his axe. "We cannot let these monsters destroy our home." But his bravery was met with futility. As Leif's axe struck a fire demon, it simply passed through the creature's body, the metal glowing red hot from the contact. The demon turned its featureless face towards Leif, a sound like crackling embers emanating from where its mouth should be. "Mortal fool," it hissed, its voice reminiscent of wood popping in a hearth. "Your weapons cannot harm us. We are the children of Muspelheim, brought forth by the trickster's folly." Leif stumbled back, his face pale with the realization of their helplessness. The trickster? Loki? But why would he do this? High above, perched on a cloud and watching the unfolding disaster with growing alarm, Loki's smug grin had long since faded. This isn't what I intended, he muttered, running a hand through his raven hair. It was supposed to be a harmless prank, a bit of excitement for these dull mortals. Not this. As the god of mischief grappled with the consequences of his actions, the fire demons continued their relentless assault on Bjornholm. The village, once a picture of serenity, now stood on the brink of annihilation. The night sky, usually a canvas of stars, was obscured by billowing smoke and the hellish glow of uncontrolled fires. In the great hall, where the villagers huddled in fear, Elsa held her grandchildren close. Her voice, usually so steady, trembled as she spoke. Have faith, little ones. The gods will not abandon us in our hour of need. But as the walls of the great hall began to heat up, the thatch roof smoldering ominously, even Elsa's unwavering faith began to falter. The night was young, and Loki's mischief had only just begun to unfold its terrible consequences upon the realm of Midgard. As chaos reigned in Bjornholm, young Astrid stood at the great hall's entrance, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. At just 16 summers old, she had always dreamed of becoming a shield maiden, but never imagined her first true test would come so soon or be so dire. The air crackled with heat and the acrid smell of smoke, making her eyes water. Yet, Astrid's gaze remained steady as she watched the fire demons wreak havoc on her beloved village. Something stirred deep within her, a calling she couldn't ignore. "Astrid, come back inside," her grandmother Elsa cried out, reaching for her granddaughter's arm. "It's not safe out there." Astrid turned to face her grandmother, her blue eyes reflecting the flames that threatened to consume their world. "Far more, I can't just hide. Someone has to do something." Elsa's weathered face creased with worry. "But child, what can you possibly do against such evil?" Astrid's hand instinctively went to the pendant around her neck, a gift from her late father. It was said to be blessed by Frigg herself, though Astrid had always thought it just a comforting tale. Now she wasn't so sure. "I don't know," Astrid admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I feel like I'm meant to try." Just then, Leif stumbled into the great hall, his face streaked with soot and his once proud armor singed and smoking. "The demons!" he gasped, collapsing to his knees. "They speak of Loki. The trickster god has brought this upon us." A collective gasp rippled through the gathered villagers. Murmurs of despair and anger filled the air, but Astrid felt a spark of hope ignite within her chest. "Loki," she breathed, her mind racing. "If Loki caused this, then perhaps he can end it too." With renewed purpose, Astrid strode towards the village's small armory, ignoring the protests of her grandmother and the other elders. She grabbed a shield that had hung on the wall for generations, its surface adorned with runes of protection and strength. As she hefted the shield, a strange warmth spread through her arm. The runes seemed to glow faintly, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. Astrid gasped, nearly dropping the shield in surprise. "By the All-Father," she whispered, tracing the runes with trembling fingers. "Is this a sign?" "Astrid?" Leif's voice cut through her wonderment. He had followed her to the armory, his face a mask of concern and confusion. "What do you think you're doing?" Astrid turned to face him, her chin lifted in defiance. "I'm going to find Loki and make him fix this mess." Leif's eyes widened in disbelief. "Have you lost your mind? You can't possibly hope to confront a god, let alone find your way to Asgard." "I have to try," Astrid insisted, strapping the shield to her back. "Our village, our people, we'll all be ash by morning if someone doesn't do something." Leif grabbed her arm, his grip firm but not unkind. "Astrid, please. You're just a girl. This is madness." Astrid's eyes flashed dangerously. "I am a shield maiden of Bjornholm," she declared, her voice ringing with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "And sometimes, Leif, madness is exactly what's needed to change the course of fate." With that, she shook off his grip and marched toward the great hall's doors. The heat hit her like a physical blow as she stepped outside, but Astrid didn't falter, She could hear shouts behind her, pleas for her to come back, but she forced herself to keep moving forward. As she navigated the burning streets of Bjornholm, dodging falling debris and skirting around battling villagers and fire demons, Astrid's mind raced. How does one find a god? How does a mortal girl from Midgard hope to outsmart the legendary trickster? Her thoughts were interrupted by a child's scream. Without hesitation, Astrid sprinted towards the sound, rounding a corner to find a young boy cornered by a fire demon. The creature loomed over the child, its body a writhing mass of flames. "Hey!" Astrid shouted, unstrapping the shield from her back. "Pick on someone your own size." The demon turned, its featureless face somehow managing to convey amusement. "And who might you be, little mortal?" it hissed, its voice like crackling embers. Astrid's heart hammered in her chest, but she stood her ground. "I am Astrid, shield maiden of Bjornholm," she declared, raising her shield, "and I command you to leave this child alone." The demon laughed, a sound like a roaring fire. "You command me? You are but a speck, a mote of dust in the eye of the universe. What power do you think you wield?" As if in answer, the runes on Astrid's shield began to glow brightly. A surge of energy coursed through her body, and without thinking, she thrust the shield forward. A blast of pure force erupted from its surface, slamming into the fire demon and sending it flying backwards. The demon shrieked in surprise and pain, its flames flickering wildly. "Impossible," it roared. You are more than you seem, girl." Astrid stood frozen in shock, staring at the shield in disbelief. The young boy scrambled to his feet and ran past her to safety, snapping her out of her daze. "You're right," Astrid said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I am more than I seem, and I'm going to save my people, even if I have to challenge Loki himself to do it." The fire demon, still reeling from the unexpected attack, regarded her with what might have been respect. "The trickster's path is not easily found, mortal, but if any can walk it, perhaps it is one such as you." With those cryptic words, the demon dissolved into a shower of sparks, leaving Astrid alone in the burning street. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders and gripping her shield tightly. "Right then," she muttered to herself, "time to find a god." And with that, Astrid set off into the chaos-filled night, her heart filled with determination, and the weight of her people's fate resting squarely on her young shoulders. The call to adventure had sounded, and Astrid had answered, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in her quest to save Midgard from Loki's mischief. With determination in her heart and the enchanted shield on her arm, Astrid set forth from the burning village of Bjornholm. The warm summer breeze, usually a comfort, now carried the acrid scent of smoke and destruction. Yet, beneath it all, there was a hint of something else, a whisper of encouragement, as if the very gods were urging her forward. As she reached the outskirts of the village, Astrid paused, realizing the magnitude of her task. "How does one even begin to find a god?" she muttered to herself, her brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, a rustling in the nearby bushes caught her attention. Astrid raised her shield, ready for another confrontation with a fire demon. Instead, a familiar face emerged. It was Eric, her young cousin. "Eric!" Astrid exclaimed, lowering her shield. "What are you doing here? It's dangerous." The boy's eyes were wide with excitement and fear. "I want to come with you, Astrid. I want to help save our village too." Astrid knelt down, placing a gentle hand on Eric's shoulder. "Eric, I know you're brave, but this journey is not for children. I need you to go back and help Farmore take care of the others. Can you do that for me?" Eric's lower lip trembled, but he nodded solemnly. I guess so. But how will you find Loki?" Astrid smiled, an idea forming in her mind. "You know all those stories Farmore tells us about the gods? Well, I remember one about Loki. They say he's drawn to chaos and mischief. So maybe, instead of finding him, I need to make him find me." Eric's eyes lit up with understanding. "Oh, like when we play hide and seek, and I make noise so you can find me." "Exactly," Astrid chuckled, ruffling his hair. "Now go on back. And Eric, Tell Farmore not to worry. I'll return, I promise. As Eric scampered back towards the village, Astrid took a deep breath and turned her gaze to the vast forest before her. The ancient trees seemed to loom larger than ever, their shadows dancing in the flickering light of the distant fires. Well, she said to herself, here goes nothing. Astrid plunged into the forest, the familiar paths now strange and foreboding in the eerie light. She walked for what felt like hours, the sounds of the burning village fading behind her, replaced by the mysterious noises of the night forest. As she pushed through a particularly dense thicket, Astrid stumbled into a small clearing. In the center stood an ancient stone, covered in moss and etched with faded runes. She approached it cautiously, running her fingers over the weathered surface. "Oh, Loki!" she called out, her voice echoing in the quiet clearing. "Trickster god, master of mischief, I, Astrid of Bjornholm, challenge you." For a moment, nothing happened. Then a cool wind swept through the clearing, causing the leaves to rustle ominously. A disembodied voice, smooth as silk and sharp as a blade, filled the air. My, it said, amusement evident in every syllable. "What have we here? A little mortal calling out to gods? Don't you know that's dangerous, girl?" Astrid's heart raced, but she stood her ground. "Are you Loki? Show yourself." A chuckle resonated through the trees. "So demanding. But I'm afraid I'm rather busy at the moment. Perhaps another time?" "No!" Astrid shouted, frustration building in her chest. "You caused this chaos and you need to fix it. Our village is burning because of your mischief." There was a pause, and then the voice returned, tinged with curiosity. "Burning, you say? How interesting. And what makes you think I had anything to do with it?" Astrid gripped her shield tightly, the runes glowing faintly in response to her emotions. "The fire demons spoke of you. They said you brought them forth. Was it fun, Loki? Was it worth the lives of innocent people?" Another gust of wind, stronger this time, whipped through the clearing. The voice, when it came again, was closer and held a hint of, was that guilt? "It wasn't supposed to go this far," it muttered, almost too quietly for Astrid to hear. Then, louder, "And what do you propose to do about it, little mortal? You can't hope to best a god." A spark of inspiration struck Astrid. She remembered the stories of Loki's competitive nature, his inability to resist a challenge. With a deep breath, she played her trump card. "I propose a contest, trickster god, a battle of wits. If I win, you must recall the fire demons and restore our village." There was a long silence, and for a moment, Astrid feared she had overplayed her hand. Then a figure began to materialize at the edge of the clearing. Tall and lithe, with raven hair and eyes that glittered with mischief, Loki regarded her with a mixture of amusement and intrigue. "A contest, you say?" he mused, circling Astrid like a predator sizing up its prey. "And what, pray tell, do I get if I win this little game of yours?" Astrid hesitated. She hadn't thought that far ahead. If you win, I'll serve you. I'll be your mortal agent in Midgard, causing whatever chaos you desire." Loki's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "My, you are a bold one, aren't you? Offering yourself up to a god? Do you have any idea what you're risking?" "I know exactly what I'm risking," Astrid replied, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "But my people are worth it." A slow smile spread across Loki's face. "Very well, Astrid of Bjornholm. You have piqued my interest. I accept your challenge, but be warned, I do not lose easily, and I do not take kindly to those who try to trick the trickster." With a wave of his hand, the forest around them seemed to shimmer and fade, replaced by a swirling vortex of colors and shapes. Astrid felt the ground disappear beneath her feet, and she was falling, tumbling through space and time. "Let the games begin!" Loki's voice echoed around her, filled with wicked glee. As Astrid fell, she clutched her shield tightly, the warm encouragement of the summer breeze now just a distant memory. Her journey had truly begun, and the fate of Bjornholm, perhaps all of Midgard, now rested on her ability to outwit the god of mischief himself. As Astrid tumbled through the swirling vortex of Loki's magic, she suddenly found herself landing softly on a bed of moss in a mystical forest clearing. The trees here were ancient, their trunks wider than any she had ever seen, with leaves that shimmered like gemstones in the dappled sunlight. Catching her breath, Astrid stood up, her shield still clutched tightly to her chest. "Where am I?" she wondered aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are in the heart of Yggdrasil, young one," a deep, creaking voice responded. Astrid whirled around, searching for the source of the voice. Her eyes widened as she realized it was coming from the largest tree in the clearing. Its bark seemed to shift and move, forming a weathered face that regarded her with eyes of amber sap. A talking tree?" Astrid gasped, taking a step back. The tree spirit chuckled, a sound like rustling leaves. "I am Eldred, guardian of this sacred grove. And you, little one, are far from home." Astrid nodded, still in awe. "I'm Astrid from Bjornholm. I'm here to challenge Loki and save my village from the fire demons he unleashed." Eldred's branches swayed thoughtfully. "A noble quest indeed. But challenging the trickster god is no small feat. You will need more than just courage to succeed." "What do you mean?" Astrid asked, stepping closer to the ancient tree. "Loki's power lies in his cunning and his words," Eldred explained. "To best him, you must learn to see beyond illusions and speak with the wisdom of ages." As Eldred spoke, the air around Astrid began to shimmer. Tiny, glowing creatures emerged from the undergrowth, their wings buzzing softly as they circled her. "What are these?" Astrid breathed, watching in wonder as the creatures danced around her. "Wood nymphs," Eldred replied, his voice warm with affection. "They are the playful spirits of the forest, and they have come to offer you their blessing." One of the nymphs, no larger than Astrid's palm, flew up to her face. Its tiny features were alight with mischief and joy. "Hello, brave one," it chirped, its voice like tinkling bells. "We've come to help you on your quest." Astrid couldn't help but smile at the nymph's enthusiasm. "Thank you, little one, but how can you help me outsmart Loki?" The nymph giggled, performing a somersault in the air. "We know all about tricks and games. Loki isn't the only one who can play." As if to demonstrate, the nymphs began to weave intricate patterns in the air with trails of shimmering light. The patterns shifted and changed, forming illusions that were breathtakingly beautiful yet impossibly complex. "Watch closely," Eldred instructed. "The nymphs' illusions are a dance of truth and deception. Learn to see the patterns within the chaos, and you will be one step closer to unraveling Loki's tricks." Astrid focused on the dancing lights, her brow furrowed in concentration. At first the patterns seemed random and confusing, but as she watched, she began to notice subtle repetitions and rhythms. I think I see it," she exclaimed after several minutes. "There's a pattern hidden within the chaos." The nymphs cheered, their tiny voices creating a melody that seemed to make the very air vibrate with joy. Eldred's bark creaked as he smiled approvingly. "Well done, young Astrid," the tree spirit said. "You have taken your first step towards true wisdom, but there is more yet to learn." As he spoke, a gentle breeze wafted through the clearing, carrying with it the scent of wild herbs and fresh water. The nymph's dance changed, becoming slower and more deliberate. "Listen now," Eldred instructed, "for the wind carries whispers of ancient secrets." Astrid closed her eyes, focusing on the sounds around her. At first, all she could hear was the rustling of leaves and the buzzing of the nymph's wings. But then, ever so faintly, she began to make out words carried on the breeze. "Riddles in the dark," the wind whispered. "Truth in lies, lies in truth. The trickster's path is never straight." "What does it mean?" Astrid asked, opening her eyes. Eldred's amber eyes twinkled. "That is for you to decipher, young one. But know this. In your battle of wits with Loki, not everything will be as it seems. You must learn to trust your instincts and see beyond the surface." The nymphs gathered around Astrid, their tiny hands touching her face and arms. Where they touched, she felt a warmth spread through her body, as if they were imbuing her with some of their magic. "We give you our blessing, Astrid of Björnholm," they said in unison, their voices blending into a harmonious chorus. "May you find laughter in the darkest moments and wisdom in the simplest things." Astrid felt tears prick at her eyes, overwhelmed by the kindness of these mystical beings. "Thank you," she whispered. "I won't forget this." Eldred's branches rustled softly. "It is time for you to continue your journey, Astrid. Remember what you have learned here, and carry the forest's blessing with you." As the tree spirit spoke, the clearing began to fade around Astrid. The nymphs waved goodbye, their laughter echoing in her ears, even as they disappeared from sight. "Wait!" Astrid called out. "How do I find Loki?" Eldred's voice, now distant, replied, "Follow the path of mischief, young one. Where chaos reigns, the trickster is never far behind." With those final words, the mystical forest vanished completely. Astrid found herself standing on a winding path that seemed to shimmer and shift before her eyes. Taking a deep breath, she gripped her shield tightly and set off down the path, her heart filled with newfound courage and the warmth of the forest's blessing. As she walked, Astrid could almost hear the nymph's laughter on the wind, urging her forward. The encounter with the mystical creatures had given her more than just knowledge. It had given her hope. And with that hope burning brightly in her chest, she felt ready to face whatever challenges Loki might throw her way. As Astrid followed the shimmering path, the landscape around her began to shift and warp. The trees twisted into impossible shapes, their branches reaching out like grasping fingers. The ground beneath her feet alternated between soft grass and hard stone with each step. It was as if reality itself was struggling to maintain its form. Suddenly, the path opened up into a vast clearing. In the center stood Loki, his emerald eyes gleaming with amusement, and a sly smile playing on his lips. He was even more imposing in person than Astrid had imagined, his very presence seeming to bend the air around him. Well, Loki drawled, his voice smooth as silk. "The little mortal has made it this far. I must say I'm impressed." Astrid squared her shoulders, meeting Loki's gaze without flinching. "I've come to challenge you, trickster god, to save my village and undo the harm you've caused." Loki's smile widened, revealing teeth that seemed just a bit too sharp. "Ah, yes, your little game. Very well. Let's see what you're made of, shall we?" With a wave of his hand, the clearing transformed. They now stood in what appeared to be a grand hall, with walls that shimmered like mother of pearl and a floor that rippled like water with each step. "Welcome to my hall of riddles," Loki announced, spreading his arms wide. "Here we shall engage in a battle of wits. 3 challenges you must face, young Astrid. Succeed, and I shall consider your request. Fail." His eyes glinted dangerously. "Well, let's just say failure is not an option you want to explore." Astrid tightened her grip on her shield, the runes glowing faintly in response to her determination. "I'm ready. What's the first challenge?" Loki snapped his fingers, and a table appeared between them, covered with an assortment of objects: a golden apple, a silver mirror, a black feather, and a small vial of swirling mist. "Your first task is simple," Loki explained, his voice taking on a rhythmic, almost hypnotic quality. "Choose the object that holds the most power, but be warned, appearances can be deceiving." Astrid approached the table cautiously, remembering Eldred's words about seeing beyond illusions. She examined each object carefully, her mind racing. The golden apple gleamed enticingly, reminding her of the stories of immortality. The silver mirror seemed to reflect more than just her face, showing glimpses of other realms. The black feather quivered slightly, as if ready to take flight. And the vial of mist? It called to her in a way she couldn't explain. Loki watched her intently, his fingers drumming an irregular beat on the table. "Time waits for no one, little mortal. Make your choice." Astrid's hand hovered over the objects, her instincts pulling her in different directions. Finally, she reached out and grasped the vial of mist. "This," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "This holds the most power." Loki's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "Oh? And what makes you say that?" Astrid held the vial up to the light, watching the mist swirl within. "The apple offers immortality, but that's a false power. The mirror shows other realms, but knowledge alone isn't true power. The feather, I'm not sure, but it feels like it represents freedom or transformation." She took a deep breath before continuing. "But this mist, it could be anything. Its potential, unformed and unlimited. In the right hands, it could become whatever the wielder needs most. That's true power." For a moment, Loki was silent, his face unreadable. Then, slowly, he began to clap. "Well-reasoned, young Astrid. You see beyond the obvious, a rare trait indeed. You've passed the first challenge." Relief washed over Astrid, but she knew better than to let her guard down. "What's next?" Loki's grin turned wicked. "Now, we play with words." He gestured, and a series of runes appeared in the air between them, glowing with an otherworldly light. "These runes form a riddle," Loki explained. "Solve it and you'll be one step closer to saving your precious village. Fail and, well, let's just say the consequences will be most unpleasant." Astrid studied the runes, her brow furrowed in concentration. They seemed to shift and change as she looked at them, making it difficult to focus. She closed her eyes, remembering the nymph's dance of illusion, and took a deep breath. When she opened her eyes again, she saw the patterns within the chaos. The riddle began to take shape in her mind. "I am not alive, but I grow. I don't have lungs, but I need air. I don't have a mouth, but water kills me. What am I?" Astrid bit her lip, her mind racing through possibilities. She could feel Loki's gaze on her, heavy with anticipation. The answer was there, just out of reach. And then it hit her. She looked up at Loki, a small smile playing on her lips. "Fire," she said confidently. "The answer is fire." Loki's eyes widened fractionally, a flicker of respect passing across his face. "Correct," he acknowledged. "You're proving to be more entertaining than I expected, little mortal." "I'm full of surprises," Astrid retorted, feeling a surge of confidence. "What's the final challenge?" Loki's smile turned predatory. "Ah, the final test. This one is a bit more personal." He snapped his fingers and suddenly multiple versions of himself appeared around the hall, each one identical to the last. "Find the real me." Loki's voice echoed from every direction. "See through the illusion to the truth beneath. You have but one chance to choose correctly." Astrid's heart pounded in her chest as she looked from one Loki to another. They all wore the same mischievous grin. All had the same glint in their emerald eyes. How could she possibly tell which was real? Then she remembered Eldred's words. "Truth in lies, lies in truth. The trickster's path is never straight." Taking a deep breath, Astrid closed her eyes and listened. Not with her ears, but with her instincts, with the blessing of the forest that still thrummed through her veins. She felt the currents of magic swirling around her, tasted the flavor of each illusion. And there, beneath it all, was a thread of something real, something true. Astrid opened her eyes and walked purposefully across the hall. She stopped in front of one of the Lokis, looking directly into his eyes. "You," she said firmly. "You're the real Loki." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the other Lokis faded away, leaving only the one Astrid had chosen. Loki's facade of amusement fell away, replaced by a look of genuine surprise, and was that respect? "Well done, Astrid of Bjornholm," he said softly. "You've bested me at my own game, a feat few can claim." Astrid stood tall, her shield glowing brightly at her side. "I've passed your 3 challenges, Loki. Now will you hold up your end of the bargain? Will you save my village?" Loki regarded her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then slowly, he nodded. "A deal?" is a deal, even for the god of mischief. Your village shall be spared, and the fire demons recalled." With a wave of his hand, the grand hall disappeared, and they were back in the forest clearing where their encounter had begun. Astrid could see smoke rising in the distance from her village, but even as she watched, it began to dissipate. "It is done," Loki said, his voice tinged with something that might have been regret. "Your people are safe." Astrid felt tears of relief prick at her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Loki tilted his head, studying her curiously. "You are an interesting mortal, Astrid. Perhaps not all humans are as dull as I once thought." And with that, he vanished in a shimmer of green light, leaving Astrid alone in the clearing, her heart full of triumph and the weight of her incredible journey. As the reality of her victory began to sink in, Astrid found herself once again in the mystical clearing where she had first confronted Loki. The god of mischief stood before her, his emerald eyes narrowed in a mixture of curiosity and begrudging respect. "You've proven yourself quite resourceful, little mortal," Loki mused, circling Astrid like a predator sizing up its prey. "But don't think for a moment that this is over. I still have a few tricks up my sleeve." Astrid's mind raced. She knew that simply besting Loki and his challenges might not be enough to truly save her village. The trickster god was known for his ability to twist words and find loopholes in any agreement. She needed to outsmart him one last time to ensure that the fire demons would truly be banished and her people left in peace. Taking a deep breath, Astrid steeled herself for what she was about to do. She remembered the lessons learned from the mystical creatures of the forest, the patterns within chaos, and the power of words. It was time to put it all to use. "Of course, Loki," Astrid said, her voice calm and steady despite her pounding heart. "I wouldn't expect anything less from the god of mischief. In fact, I have a proposal for you." Loki's eyebrow arched in interest. "Oh? And what might that be?" Astrid smiled, channeling all the confidence she could muster. "A story. A tale of such intricacy and mischief that it would put even your greatest pranks to shame. If I can tell you a story that surprises even you, that makes even the god of mischief pause in wonder, then you must not only recall the fire demons but vow to leave my village and all of Midgard in peace for 100 years. Loki's eyes gleamed with interest and amusement. "And if your story fails to impress me, then I shall serve you for those 100 years instead," Astrid replied without hesitation. "My mind and my talents at your disposal, to cause whatever chaos you desire." A slow, wicked grin spread across Loki's face. My, you do play a dangerous game, little Astrid. Very well. I accept your challenge. Weave your tale, mortal. Let us see if you can truly surprise the trickster." Astrid nodded, taking a moment to gather her thoughts. She knew she had to make this story captivating from the very beginning to weave a tale so intricate that even Loki would be drawn in. And so she began. In a realm beyond the 9 worlds, where even the roots of Yggdrasil dare not reach, there lived a being of pure chaos. As Astrid spoke, the clearing around them began to shimmer and change. Her words took on a life of their own, painting vivid images in the air. Loki's eyes widened slightly, his full attention captured by the unfolding tale. The story Astrid wove was one of epic proportions, filled with twists and turns that would make even the most seasoned skald green with envy. She spoke of tricksters tricked, of chaos beings bound by their own mischief, of worlds turned upside down and inside out. Throughout her narration, Astrid carefully wove in elements she had learned on her journey. The wisdom of Eldred, the playfulness of the wood nymphs, the riddles of the runes, all found their place in her tale. She crafted her story like an intricate tapestry, each thread carefully placed to create a greater whole. Loki listened, his expression shifting from amusement to surprise, and then to something akin to wonder. As Astrid's tale reached its climax, even the trickster god leaned forward, eager to hear how it would end. "And so," Astrid said, her voice ringing clear in the mystical clearing, the chaos being realized that the greatest trick of all was the one it had played on itself. In seeking to create the ultimate mischief, it had brought order to the universe, binding itself to the very rules it sought to break. As the last words of her story hung in the air, Astrid fell silent, watching Loki's face intently. For a long moment, the god of mischief said nothing. "You have a gift, Astrid of Bjornholm. Your words have power. Use it wisely or not. After all, a little mischief now and then can be quite fun." With a wink and a shimmer of green light, Loki vanished, leaving Astrid alone in the clearing. She stood there for a moment, processing all that had happened. Then, clutching her shield close, she began the journey back to her village, her heart light with victory and her mind filled with the power of stories. Astrid had done more than save her village. She had outwitted the god of mischief himself, using nothing but her wits and the power of her words. As she walked, she couldn't help but smile, wondering what other adventures might lie ahead for a clever mortal who had learned to see the patterns in chaos and weave them into tales of wonder. As Astrid's tale reached its climax, the very fabric of reality around them seemed to shimmer and shift. The air crackled with energy, and Loki's eyes widened in a mixture of surprise and admiration. The young shield maiden's words had woven a spell more powerful than either of them had anticipated. And as the chaos being realized, the true nature of its own existence, Astrid continued, her voice strong and clear. It found itself bound by the very mischief it had sought to unleash. As she spoke these final words, a great wind swept through the clearing. Loki's form flickered as if struggling against an unseen force. The trickster god's eyes met Astrid's, a newfound respect evident in his gaze. "Clever girl," Loki murmured, a wry smile playing on his lips. "You've done more than tell a story. You've woven a binding." Astrid stood firm, her shield glowing faintly at her side. "I have," she acknowledged. "And now, Loki, you must fulfill your end of the bargain. Recall the fire demons and restore my village." Loki chuckled, shaking his head in bemused defeat. "Very well, little storyteller. A deal is a deal, and I find myself compelled to honor it." With a grand gesture, Loki raised his arms. The air around them shimmered, and suddenly they were no longer in the mystical clearing but hovering above Bjornholm. Astrid gasped as she saw her village below, still besieged by the raging fire demons. "Watch closely," Loki instructed, his voice taking on a resonant, godly quality. "For you are about to witness something few mortals ever see, a god undoing his own mischief." Loki began to speak in an ancient tongue, words of power that made the very air vibrate. As he chanted, tendrils of green energy emanated from his fingertips, reaching down towards the village. The fire demons, sensing the change in the air, looked up in confusion. One by one they began to flicker and fade, drawn back by Loki's magic. Their flames dimmed, their forms growing insubstantial as they were pulled away from Midgard. "Return, children of Muspelheim," Loki commanded, his voice echoing across the land. "Your time in this realm is at an end." Astrid watched in awe as the demons were recaptured, their fiery bodies condensing into small, glowing orbs that floated up towards Loki's outstretched hands. The fires they had caused began to die down, leaving behind scorched earth and damaged buildings, but no longer threatening to consume the entire village. As the last of the demons was drawn back, Loki closed his hands around the glowing orbs. When he opened them again, there sat the small obsidian sphere he had originally used to unleash the creatures. "It is done," Loki announced, turning to Astrid. "The fire demons are contained once more." Astrid's heart swelled with relief and triumph, but she knew her task wasn't quite finished. "And the village?" she pressed. "You promised to restore it." Loki raised an eyebrow, a hint of his usual mischief returning to his expression. "Did I? I recall agreeing to recall the demons and leave Midgard in peace. Restoration wasn't part of our original bargain." For a moment, Astrid's heart sank. Had she failed to outsmart the trickster god after all? But then she remembered the power of her own words, the story she had woven, Ah, but it was, Astrid said confidently. In my tale, the chaos being not only undid its mischief, but restored balance to the world it had disrupted. And you, Loki, are bound by the power of that story. Loki's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in appreciation. Well played, little one. Well played indeed. You've mastered the art of loopholes and binding words. I dare say you'd make a fine trickster yourself. With a resigned sigh that didn't quite hide his amusement, Loki waved his hand once more. Green energy flowed down into the village, and Astrid watched in amazement as buildings rebuilt themselves. Scorched earth turned green once more, and the damage wrought by the fire demons was erased. As the restoration neared completion, Loki turned to Astrid. Your village is saved, young Astrid, and I find myself bound by your cleverness to leave Midgard in peace, for a time at least. Astrid nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Thank you, Loki. I hope you found this encounter enlightening. Loki laughed, a sound that sent ripples through the air around them. Oh, indeed I have. You've reminded me that even gods can learn new tricks. But remember, little storyteller, mischief always finds a way. Our paths may cross again someday. With a wink and a shimmer of green light, Loki vanished, leaving Astrid alone in the air above her restored village. As she felt herself gently floating down towards the ground, Astrid reflected on her incredible journey. She had faced the god of mischief himself, armed with nothing but her wits, her shield, and the power of her words. She had tricked the trickster, bound the unbindable, and saved her people from destruction. As her feet touched the ground on the outskirts of Bjornholm, Astrid heard the joyful cries of her fellow villagers. They rushed towards her, faces filled with relief and gratitude. Astrid, you've saved us, her grandmother Elsa cried, enveloping her in a warm embrace. Astrid hugged her back, tears of joy and relief streaming down her face. We're safe now, she assured her people. The fire demons are gone and Loki has vowed to leave us in peace. As the villagers celebrated around her, Astrid gazed up at the sky, a sense of wonder filling her heart. She had done more than save her village. She had proven that even a young shield maiden from Midgard could stand toe-to-toe with a god and emerge victorious. And as the sun set on Bjornholm, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Astrid knew that this was not the end of her story, but merely the beginning of a legend that would be told for generations to come. As the villagers of Bjornholm celebrated their miraculous salvation, the sky above suddenly darkened. A low rumble of thunder rolled across the heavens, growing louder with each passing moment. The air crackled with electricity, and the hairs on Astrid's arms stood on end. What's happening? Young Eric cried, clinging to his grandmother Elsa's skirts. Astrid's eyes widened as she realized what was coming. Everyone stand back, she shouted, raising her shield instinctively. No sooner had the words left her mouth than a blinding bolt of lightning struck the ground in the center of the village square. The thunderclap that followed was deafening, causing the villagers to cry out in alarm. As the light faded and the dust settled, a towering figure stood where the lightning had struck. Thor, the god of thunder, had arrived. He was even more imposing than the stories had described. Clad in gleaming armor, with a red cape billowing behind him, Thor cut an awe-inspiring figure. Mjolnir, his legendary hammer, crackled with residual lightning in his grip. Thor's piercing blue eyes scanned the village, taking in the scene before him. His gaze finally settled on Astrid, who stood at the forefront of the gathered villagers, her shield still raised. Who among you is responsible for this? Thor's booming voice echoed across the square. I sensed great magic at work here, the undoing of chaos most foul. Speak. For a moment, no one dared to move. Then, gathering her courage, Astrid stepped forward. I am Astrid of Bjornholm, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. If you seek the one who challenged Loki and saved our village, that would be me. Thor's eyebrows shot up in surprise. He strode towards Astrid, each step causing the ground to tremble slightly. As he towered over her, Astrid forced herself to meet his gaze, refusing to be intimidated. "You?" Thor said, his voice a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. "A mere mortal girl claims to have bested Loki, the god of mischief?" Astrid nodded firmly. "I did. I challenged him to a contest of wits and bound him with the power of a story. He was compelled to recall the fire demons he had unleashed and restore our village." Thor's expression shifted from skepticism to amazement. He let out a hearty laugh that sounded like rolling thunder. "By Odin's beard, it seems the mortals of Midgard have grown more cunning since last I visited. Tell me, young Astrid, how did you manage such a feat?" And so, Astrid recounted her incredible journey. She told Thor of her encounter with Eldred the tree spirit and the playful wood nymphs, of the challenges Loki had set for her, and of the clever tale she had woven to bind the trickster god. As she spoke, Thor listened intently, his expression alternating between amusement and admiration. When Astrid finished her tale, the god of thunder nodded solemnly. "You have shown great courage and wisdom, Astrid of Bjornholm," Thor proclaimed. "Few mortals, and indeed few gods, can claim to have outwitted my brother Loki. You have done a great service not only to your village but to all of Midgard." Astrid bowed her head respectfully. "Thank you, mighty Thor. I only did what I had to do to protect my people." Thor's eyes twinkled with approval. "And that, young shield maiden, is the mark of a true hero." He turned to address the gathered villagers. "People of Bjornholm, you should be proud of your young protector. She has shown valor worthy of the halls of Valhalla." A cheer went up from the crowd, and Astrid felt her cheeks flush with a mixture of pride and embarrassment. Thor then knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with Astrid. His voice softened, though it still rumbled like distant thunder. "Tell me, brave one, what would you ask of the god of thunder? Surely one who has accomplished such a feat deserves a boon." Astrid considered for a moment, then spoke with conviction. "Mighty Thor, I ask not for myself, but for my village. I request your protection for Bjornholm, that we might be safe from future godly mischief or other worldly threats." Thor's eyebrows rose in surprise once more. Then he broke into a wide grin. "Noble as well as clever. Very well, Astrid of Bjornholm. You shall have your boon." He stood, raising Mjolnir to the sky. "I, Thor Odinson, do hereby extend my protection to this village and its people. Let all who would threaten Bjornholm know that they invite the wrath of the god of thunder." Lightning flashed across the sky, sealing Thor's proclamation. The villagers cheered once more, their voices rising in gratitude and awe. As the excitement began to die down, Thor turned back to Astrid. "You have impressed me greatly, young one. Keep that shield close. I sense it holds power beyond mere metal. And know that should you ever need aid, you need only call upon the storm." With that, Thor began to spin Mjolnir at his side, preparing to depart. But before he left, he fixed Astrid with one last look of respect. "Farewell, Astrid of Bjornholm. May your tales ever be bold and your heart ever courageous. We shall meet again, I think, in this life or the next." In a flash of lightning and a clap of thunder, Thor was gone, leaving behind a stunned but jubilant village. As the people of Bjornholm celebrated their newfound divine protection, Astrid stood quietly, her mind whirling with the events of the past few days. She had set out to save her village and had ended up impressing not one but two Norse gods. As she looked around at the joyful faces of her people, Astrid realized that her journey had only just begun. With her wit, her bravery, and now the respect of Thor himself, who knew what adventures lay ahead? With a smile, Astrid raised her shield high, its runes glowing faintly in the fading light of day. Whatever challenges the future might bring, she knew she would face them with courage, cleverness, and the unbreakable spirit of a true shield maiden. As the people of Bjornholm reveled in their salvation and newfound divine protection, high above in the realm eternal, another celebration was about to begin. The great golden halls of Asgard buzzed with excitement as news of Astrid's feat spread among the gods. Odin, The All-Father, sat upon his throne in the grand hall of Valhalla, his one eye gleaming with interest as Thor recounted the tale of the mortal girl who had outwitted Loki. And then, Father, she bound him with nothing but the power of her words. Thor's booming voice echoed through the hall, filled with admiration. A mere mortal, wielding a story like a weapon sharper than any blade. Odin stroked his beard thoughtfully. Fascinating indeed. It seems the mortals of Midgard continue to surprise us. He turned to address the assembled gods and Einherjar. Let us honor this brave shield maiden. Prepare a feast worthy of her deeds. The halls of Asgard burst into action. Servants scurried about, laying out golden plates and goblets. The kitchens roared to life, preparing a banquet fit for the gods themselves. Meanwhile, in a quieter corner of Asgard, Frigg, the goddess of wisdom, smiled to herself. She had been watching Astrid's journey with great interest, and now she prepared a special gift for the young heroine. As the preparations neared completion, Odin raised Gungnir, his mighty spear. With a thunderous strike against the floor, he opened a shimmering portal between Asgard and Midgard. In Bjornholm, Astrid was helping to rebuild a damaged fence when she felt a strange tingling sensation. Before she could react, she found herself enveloped in a warm, golden light. When the light faded, Astrid gasped in awe. She stood in the most magnificent hall she had ever seen, its walls gleaming with gold and precious gems. Around her, towering figures in resplendent armor and flowing robes regarded her with curiosity and respect. "Welcome, Astrid of Bjornholm," Odin's voice resonated through the hall. "You stand in Valhalla, honored guest of the Aesir." Astrid, momentarily struck speechless, quickly collected herself and bowed deeply. "All-Father, I am honored beyond words." Odin's eye twinkled with amusement. "Rise, young one. You have earned your place here this night. Come, join us in celebration of your deeds." As if on cue, the hall erupted into cheers and applause. Gods and Einherjar alike raised their goblets in toast to Astrid. The young shield maiden felt her cheeks flush with a mixture of pride and embarrassment. Thor appeared at her side, grinning broadly. "Come, brave Astrid. Let me introduce you to my friends. Volstagg, Fandral, Hogun, Sif. Meet the mortal who bested our trickster brother." The warriors three and Lady Sif gathered around, each eager to hear Astrid's tale firsthand. Volstagg, his red beard quivering with excitement, boomed, "Is it true you challenged Loki to a battle of wits? How did you manage such a feat without losing your mind, or your life?" Astrid, finding her courage, smiled. "Well, it wasn't easy. But I remembered something my grandmother always said. Even the cleverest fox can be caught if you know where to set the trap." Fandral laughed heartily. "Oh, I like this one. She has the heart of a true warrior and the wit to match." As the night wore on, Astrid found herself regaling the gods with her tale, emboldened by their genuine interest and the warmth of Asgardian mead. She spoke of her journey, of the mystical creatures she encountered, and of the story she wove to bind Loki. Bragi, the god of poetry, listened with rapt attention. "Your words have power, young Astrid," he said, his eyes shining with approval. "You weave tales as skillfully as any skald I've known." As the feast reached its peak, Frigg approached Astrid, a gentle smile on her face. "You have done well, child," the goddess said, her voice soft yet filled with power. "Your courage and wisdom have earned you a place in the annals of both mortal and divine history." Frigg held out her hands, revealing a small, intricately carved wooden box. A gift from the goddess of wisdom to one who has shown wisdom beyond her years. Astrid accepted the box with trembling hands. When she opened it, she gasped. Inside lay a delicate silver necklace, adorned with a pendant in the shape of Yggdrasil, the world tree. "This necklace is imbued with a fraction of my power," Frigg explained. "It will enhance your natural gift for weaving words and seeing the patterns in chaos. Use it wisely, young shield maiden." Overwhelmed with gratitude, Astrid bowed deeply. "Thank you, gracious Frigg. I will treasure it always and strive to be worthy of such a gift." As the celebration continued around her, Astrid found a moment of quiet to reflect. She stood on a balcony overlooking the splendor of Asgard, the rainbow hues of the Bifrost Bridge shimmering in the distance. Loki, who had been conspicuously absent from the festivities, materialized beside her. Astrid tensed, but the god of mischief merely smiled, a hint of grudging respect in his eyes. "Enjoying your moment of glory, little storyteller?" Loki asked, his voice silky smooth. Astrid met his gaze steadily. "I am honored by the god's kindness, yes. But I haven't forgotten the lesson you taught me, Loki." Loki raised an eyebrow. "Oh? And what lesson is that?" "That even in victory, one must remain vigilant," Astrid replied. "For mischief, like the tide, always returns." Loki threw back his head and laughed, a sound of genuine amusement. "Oh, you are a clever one. Perhaps I didn't lose our little contest after all. I may have gained something far more valuable, a worthy opponent." With a wink and a shimmer of green light, Loki vanished, leaving Astrid alone with her thoughts once more. As the night's festivities began to wind down, Astrid felt a warm, comforting drowsiness settle over her. The music of the spheres, a melody beyond mortal comprehension, seemed to fill the air, lulling her into a peaceful state. Odin approached, his eye twinkling with paternal warmth. "You have earned your rest, Astrid of Bjornholm. Sleep now, and know that you have brought honor to your people and earned the respect of the gods." Astrid felt herself being gently guided to a soft bed of furs and silks. As she drifted off to sleep, the music of the spheres still echoing in her ears, she knew that her life would never be the same. She had walked among the gods, feasted in Valhalla, and proven herself a true hero. And as Astrid slumbered in the halls of Asgard, her dreams were filled with visions of future adventures, of challenges yet to come, and of the endless possibilities that awaited a mortal girl who had captured the attention of the gods themselves. As the golden light of dawn broke over the horizon, Astrid found herself gently transported back to Bjornholm. She awoke in her own bed, the memories of her celestial celebration still vivid in her mind. The silver necklace from Frigg hung around her neck, a tangible reminder that it had not been a mere dream. Astrid stepped out of her home, breathing in the crisp morning air. The village was quiet, peaceful in a way it hadn't been since before Loki's mischief had unleashed chaos upon them. As she walked through the streets, she saw her fellow villagers emerging from their homes, their faces etched with a mixture of wonder and relief. "Astrid!" called out Eric, running up to her with eyes wide with excitement. "Is it true? Did you really feast with the gods in Asgard?" Astrid smiled, ruffling the boy's hair affectionately. "It's true, Eric. But remember, even the gods can learn from us mortals. Our strength lies not just in our arms, but in our hearts and minds." As word spread of Astrid's return, villagers gathered in the square, eager to hear of her adventures. Elsa, her grandmother, pushed through the crowd, enveloping Astrid in a warm embrace. "Oh, my brave girl," Elsa whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "You've done us all proud." Astrid hugged her back tightly, feeling a lump form in her throat. "I couldn't have done it without your stories, Farmore. They gave me the strength and wisdom I needed." As the villagers clamored for details of her divine feast, Astrid raised her hands for silence. "Friends, neighbors," she began, her voice carrying across the square. "I have indeed walked in the halls of Asgard, but the true victory belongs to all of us. Our village stands strong because we stood together in the face of chaos." A cheer went up from the crowd, and Bjorn, the village elder, stepped forward. "Astrid speaks wisely," he proclaimed. "Let us use this day to reflect on our blessings and to share our own tales of courage and perseverance." And so, as the day wore on, the village square became a place of storytelling. Children and adults alike gathered to share their experiences of the fiery ordeal and their joy at the village's salvation. Astrid's tale became interwoven with those of her fellow villagers, each story adding to the rich tapestry of their shared experience. As evening approached, Elsa began to gather the younger children for bed. "Come now, little ones," she called out gently. "It's time for rest." "But we're not tired," protested little Freya, stifling a yawn. "We want to hear more stories about the gods." Astrid knelt down beside the children, her eyes twinkling with mischief and warmth. "How about I tell you a special bedtime story?" she offered. "One that will help you have the sweetest dreams." The children eagerly agreed, and soon Astrid found herself surrounded by a circle of rapt young faces with even some adults lingering nearby to listen. "Once upon a time," Astrid began, her voice taking on a soothing, rhythmic quality, "in a land not so different from our own, there was a village blessed by the gods." As Astrid wove her tale, she infused it with the magic she had witnessed in Asgard. She spoke of brave heroes and clever tricksters, of wisdom earned and lessons learned. But more than that, she spoke of the strength found in community, of the power of kindness, and of the peace that comes from knowing one's place in the grand tapestry of the universe. The children's eyes grew heavy as they listened, lulled by the cadence of Astrid's words and the warmth of the summer evening. Parents gently scooped up their drowsy little ones, murmuring thanks to Astrid as they carried them off to bed. As the night deepened, a sense of profound peace settled over Bjornholm. The village, so recently threatened by cosmic forces beyond their control, now slumbered soundly beneath a blanket of stars. Astrid found herself walking to the edge of the village where she could look out over the fields and forests beyond. The pendant of Yggdrasil glimmered softly in the moonlight, and she felt a connection to something greater than herself. "You've done well, little storyteller," came a familiar voice from behind her. Astrid turned to see Loki leaning against a tree, his form shimmering slightly in the darkness. "Loki," she acknowledged, keeping her voice calm, "have you come to cause more mischief?" The god of mischief chuckled, shaking his head. "Not tonight. I've come to see the power of your words at work. You've given these mortals something even the Aesir sometimes struggle to achieve: true peace." Astrid raised an eyebrow, surprised by the sincerity in Loki's voice. "Perhaps that's the greatest magic of all," she mused. "The ability to find peace, even in a world of chaos." Loki nodded, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "Indeed. You've taught me something, Astrid of Bjornholm. A lesson I won't soon forget." With a wink and a shimmer of green light, Loki vanished, leaving Astrid alone with her thoughts once more. As she made her way back to her home, Astrid could feel the peaceful slumber of her village all around her. Her tale had become a lullaby, not just for the children, but for everyone who had faced fear and uncertainty in the face of godly mischief. Settling into her own bed, Astrid smiled to herself. She had started this journey as a simple village girl and emerged as a legend, a mortal who had outsmarted a god, feasted in Asgard, and brought peace to her people through the power of her words. As sleep began to claim her, Astrid's last thoughts were of the future. She knew that this was not the end of her story, but merely the beginning. Whatever adventures lay ahead, she would face them with courage, wisdom, and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest heroes are those who bring peace rather than seek glory. And so, Midgard slept soundly, its people safe in the knowledge that even the cleverest of gods could be outsmarted by a brave and quick-witted human. Astrid's tale spread across the land, becoming a bedtime story treasured by children and adults alike, a reminder of the power of cleverness, courage, and the magic of a well-told tale.